and welcome back to the HR Tech channel. This next session will be delivered by Wingit Chan, and he will be discussing HR process automation, the clear benefits for your business. If you have any questions for Wingit, please feel free to submit them into the live discussion box or connect with him over LinkedIn, and he'll be happy to answer your questions that way too. So without further ado, over to you, Wingit.
Thank you, Laura. So good morning, everybody. I'm Wingit from Lux Asia. So here to talk to all of you today about HR process automation and what are some clear benefits for your business. So I go to do better than that. I'm not just going to talk about the benefits. I'm also going to tell you maybe what are the areas that you can perhaps consider automating or digitalizing, or as well as how you can go about doing it. So let's go on. Okay, so I maybe share a bit more information about myself. So for me, I've been working for more than 15 years. Current role is in Lux Asia as the head of talent excitement, aka HR. So before that, I was in the BreadTalk Group, which is a food services company. So this is just to give you a bit of context, I think, because I'll be sharing some of my past experiences in automating some of the HR processes. So I mean, the stories that I share may not be exactly the same as what you're experiencing in your own businesses, but I think if you understand the context, hopefully some of the learning points will be applicable as well. The point that I would like to make is that I hold an engineering degree, so you can trust me. I think in terms of process management, etc., I do have a bit of know-how and credibility. Okay. So just to go on a bit more about Lux Asia, for those who are not familiar, you can always Google about it. We are a leading omni-channel partner in Asia Pacific. So we work with more than 120 global brands and partners. We have been around since 1986. The HQ is in Tai Seng. So if you drive down Tai Seng, you might have seen our building. Our brand partners, you may not, if you are not familiar with us, I'm sure you will be very familiar with some of our other brands. The brands that we work with, like Bulgari, Galan, Hermes, The Prairie, etc. We also have joint ventures with a number of big companies like LVMH, Puig, and Yves Rocher. So overall, team size about 2,200 employees spread over 15 different markets, and we have about 4,500 retail touch points. So that's that, just to give an overview of what Lux Asia is about and a bit of a background about myself. Okay. So I just dive into it. So what is HR automation? I think put very simply, HR automation is simply looking at manual HR tasks, things that are now currently done by hand or by people, and converting them to electronic or digital records or processes. So getting a machine to do it or getting a computer to do it for you. And I think the one thing that I want to emphasize is that I know that there's been a lot of talk about AI, machine learning, digitization, automation, but this phenomenon is really not something that is new. I think it's been ongoing for a very, very long time, ever since we have technology. So I mean, one very good example I would say is the simple thing about payroll. So I think right now most of us will get our salary credited by Giro into our bank account at the start or end of the month, right? It did used to always be that way, right? So maybe just about 20-30 years ago, the HR would have to prepare that listing of employees, how much is to be paid to every single one, go to the bank, withdraw that money, count the money, put it into envelopes, and then pass it on to individual employees. So over time, I think because of technology, because we have bank transfers, etc., some of these processes have gone away for good, and it improves productivity and efficiency. So I think many of the processes that we now take for granted or that we see as commonplace, they didn't used to be that way, right? So likewise, I think if you have some fear or some concerns about going the automation route, just be assured that it is something that's always been done. It's just part of the evolution. The decision you have to make is whether you want to be, I think, at the forefront of this, or you want to be maybe at the laggard where everybody has implemented something and you decide to join in. Either way, there's no right or wrong answer. What I'm here to do is to maybe share a bit more about my own experiences and what I see as the clear benefits of automating some of the HR processes. So I think the next part that might be of interest to everyone is what are the areas in HR that can be automated, right? So this is a chart that I reproduced from KPMG. It's a research that they did, looking at all the HR solutions that are on the market now, as well as the HR processes that usually happens within an organization. So as you look at it, I think the pink ones are the functions or the processes that can be automated, right? The blue ones are perhaps a bit harder to automate. If you look at it, almost 70-80% of processes can have some level of automation within HR. And the ones that tend to be harder to be automated are the ones that are a bit more complex, that still requires human judgment and input. So if you look at things like change management, business strategy, doing employee relations, I think this is where the human touch is still very important. These are the areas that the machine can't do a better job, right? But even increasingly, I think with machine learning, with AI, we're starting to see more and more of some of these tasks being automated away. I think things like what maybe 3 years ago we would have thought of, screening through applications, job applications. Now there are solutions on the market that allows you to do that. Just picking up keywords and doing some processing. There are also now chatbots available on the market that can fill very simple, basic employee queries without having an actual person at the back end. So, but I think broadly speaking, what you can see is that the more repetitive task, the more manual, repetitive task are better performed usually by machines, right? So simple things that are not very complex, data management, forms and workflows, payroll services, I believe these are the lower hanging fruits that if your company has not already gone the systems for some of these processes, I think it's a good start, right? To start looking at some of these areas, because they are pretty straightforward, and would I think a machine is better placed because of the accuracy to do it. So broadly speaking, I think there are a few areas that I see where automation can yield real benefits. I think the one is definitely in the areas of records management. So simple things like performance, personnel files. I think there are still some companies who maintain those big folders, etc. Of personnel files, and as anything with hard copy, they get faded over time. You need to cater the space to store them, and retrieval can also be a problem. You need to make sure that they are filed properly, etc. So if you convert them to a digital format, it's a lot more convenient. You can just press Ctrl F, look for the things that you want. You can come up very quickly. So records management is one area I think a lot of companies can go into in the automation process. Second is this thing about employee self-service. So I think technology provides the ability for a lot of people to self-help nowadays. So where previously a lot of HR transactions, they need to come to HR to do, like performance appraisal, leave application, checking of pay slip, etc. A lot of it, if you move on to a good system or platform, the employee can do it themselves. They get the information faster, so as experience is also more pleasant. At the same time, it frees the HR up to do other things, right? They don't need to invest that time to retrieve these records and to entertain and to service the employees. Workflow management. So I think in HR, very often times a lot of our processes are in steps, right? You have to do this onboarding, right? Just take the usual onboarding phase. You have applications coming in. You have to filter them, shortlist them for hiring manager. Hiring manager provides the feedback, route it on, shortlist, route it on, and then the final selected candidate, then we have to make a salary package or offer. That has to go through an approval process. Upon approval, offer is made. Someone has to check that the documents subsequently are followed up, sent to the candidate, signed off, and additional documents are provided. So there's usually a workflow, and there are many of it. What I cited is just one example. There are many of it in a HR environment. So I think the system is very well placed to do this, because it ensures that there's a tracking of all the steps that's involved. Once the step is complete, it moves on to the next step automatically. it helps to make it a lot more straightforward. Okay, so I think closely related to this is this thing about process automation. I think the main difference between workflow management and process automation is that if there are some processes that happens on a regular basis, you can just set it up in the system and let it run on the background, right? Once you click a button, you just process and it comes out at the other end. I think one very good example is this simple thing about time attendance, which is also here in this chart, right? Where previously, I think without systems in place, people would need to check the clock in, clock out, cut the time sheets, make the OT or the time calculations, compute it, pass it on to payroll, upload into the system, and then make payment. Right, this theoretically the whole process can be automated, right from the start. When the person clock in and out, the timings are captured, the system calculates the OT. So long as someone approves the timings, all the subsequent calculations are all automated, and then it is pushed out to the payroll system and so forth. So that frees up, I think, a lot of time and effort in the checking process and the data collation process and the uploading process. And of course, I think this thing is something that's increasingly more important, data analysis. With more and more data, and we always talk about a data-driven approach, right? How do we make sure that we make very good decisions? How do we use data to predict certain HR trends, etc.? Increasingly, with more and more systems and data, and the data that's collected in these systems, that becomes an area that I feel automation actually has a lot of potential to play. So there you have it. I think five areas, and if you look at this chart, I think it will be a good starting point as to if you are considering which are the areas to automate. Perhaps look at the areas at the lower end of the bottom left-hand corner of the charts to see if something, some of these processes or records management has already been automated in your businesses. If not, can consider those are the areas to be considered. Okay. So the title of my session is the benefits of automation. So then the reasons why should you go on an automation journey? I can think of a few reasons, but the most important I feel is really about reducing errors. So if you look back, I think in your course of your work, the errors that happened recently, I think you find that invariably, I think most of them are due to human errors. Whether someone missed a step, forgot to file a certain document, or didn't fill in certain fields, usually because of that. And the reason why is because I think humans, we are just not perfect, and we do make mistakes. Systems less so. Systems they are a lot more predictable, they are a lot more reliable, but I would qualify to say that they have to be set up correctly, right? The setting up is obviously very important because systems are not nimble. They will run as how you set it up. So, but if you set it up correctly and if you set your workflow correctly, in theory, they shouldn't miss a step unless there's a virus or something is wrong with it. They are a lot more predictable than humans. So this minimizes, I think, any compliance and policy violations. And I think in HR dimension, HR field, this is something that is probably very important. The second thing is about just reducing the manual work for everyone all around. So this helps, I feel, to improve the job satisfaction of the HR teams as well as their productivity. So I've been HR for a while. I've spoken to many HR people. I don't think any of them sign up to do HR in order to file papers, in order to apply for work pass, and do a lot of admin chores. Yeah, some people are better at it, but I haven't really come across anybody who said that they sign up for HR job because they set out to just do the administrative work. I think a lot of us want to make a real impact to the lives of employees, and come up with meaningful policies and engagement activities. So I think having machines do some of this repetitive work, as I mentioned in my earlier slide, I think having someone, a machine at the background to process, to automate some of these things, and allowing self-service to take out a lot of these tasks helps to free up the time, right, for HR to do higher order, higher level stuff. I think things like talent management, things like employee engagement, etc., rather than
spend a bulk of the time handling administrative work. I think don't take my word for it. I think go do your own research. Work with your HR team currently. Sit down with them on a daily basis. Find out how much time actually they spend just doing filing work, just doing simple collation work, doing work pass applications, etc. You might be astounded as to actually how much time these little things do add up. Okay, so moving on. Okay, I got 2 points come up at the same time. Take them together. So better decision making. I mentioned just now. I think with more data and better quality data, actually it helps to allows for better decision making at the management level. So I mean, if you have set up a system that is going to pull in data from all over the place, you are going to definitely get some insights from them. Simple things like labor cost reports. If you have a system where all your employee information, costs and claims and OT, etc., is being tracked alive, you can immediately get a sensing of where you are going to land in terms of cost control, and that is important to business, right? There are of course other things like certain leading indicators like the leave consumption rates. What does it tell you? Employee satisfaction. How rather than wait for 2 years to conduct employee engagement survey, I think there are platforms that allow you to do quarterly pulse checks. So that gives you a quick dipstick sensing of how your employee sentiments are on the ground. And these are very useful because if you have information and you have them readily available, you are able to get a much better picture and a more accurate picture of what are the people issues that are on the ground, and to take actions accordingly. So you don't have to wait to collate very complex Excel reports. You can build ready dashboards for your management teams. They can just go in straight away, have access to some of these information about their own workforce, and they can then immediately make changes, operational or business changes based on some of this information. Enhancing employee experience. So I talked about having employee self-service. Yes, so they have to do some work on their parts. But actually, if you think about it, right now they also have to do some work on their parts. It's just going through a different route, right? Simple things like leave application, simple things like performance appraisal. They have always been doing it. It's just that they've been doing it on a different way. So what we are doing is that we enhance the experience, allow a better platform for them to do it. So that they feel more engaged. I think the other thing is they feel greater ownership. So back to the point about giving data accessibility, if your management team or your mid managers have access to some of this HR information and data, they then also helps to own that HR portfolio, to say that because they now have visibility of some of the issues that could be going on the ground, they then have the responsibility to help HR, work with HR to address them. So I think all in all, having technology does help to enhance employee experience. I think all the more so in this post-COVID period where a lot of us are working virtually, then I think the importance of digital tools are even more important. Without that face-to-face interaction, how do you bring about a good onboarding experience? How do you still continue to have learning, right? So e-learning would definitely take on a more important role. So these are aspects that I think without technology would be a bit difficult to do in the traditional manual way. The last point is I leave it to the last because cutting costs is subjective. I think and also depending on the time long that you are looking at. Systems automation invariably requires some level of investment, be it in terms of a headcount, a person to look after the system itself and to build it up. The system setup itself, usually there is that investment, right? CapEx investment, and it might not be cheap depending on the solution that you opt for. It could be quite substantial, but I think you have to weigh against, I think the 4 other points are about the reducing errors, improving productivity, better decision making. What's the ROI of that? And some of these changes, once you make it, is a one-off cost that's incurred, but the benefits, you continue to enjoy them for a long time to come. So I think it's a matter of weighing what is important. Of course, I think in any businesses, there will always be competing priorities, right? Every dollar, there will be resources from other departments who ask for it. Oh, okay. But I think a case can be made to cut costs. Okay, so why now? If not, I think I feel now is as good a time as any others, but I think the key reason I will push for it is in the last 5-10 years, you notice there's a lot of mobile adoption. So currently we have, I think in Singapore, easily 90%. Everybody now has a mini computer in their own pocket. That makes technology adoption a lot easier compared to many years ago. So to push out any digital solution to your workforce now is a lot more convenient and workable compared to a few years back. There's an increasing focus on data. I think, as I mentioned just now, a lot of emphasis on making data-driven decisions. But the first part of having data analytics is to have the data in the first place. So if you don't automate your process, you have to put a system in place, you don't digitize your records, it's very hard to gather the data. So it makes sense to invest then in building up this records collection, so that then you can work on getting insights from the data that you collect. There's a lot more solutions on the market. I think that's the purpose of this tech workshop and seminar. I think hopefully from these 2 days, you hear from many other sharing about the solutions that are available, and some of them are pretty remarkable, and they may be able to solve some of the problems that you have. I would say that I have noticed there's a huge drop in cost. I think across the board in some of the solutions. Don't have to always go for the most expensive solution on the market. Many are offering it as a software as a service. I think that offers certain advantages in that the initial capital outlay is a lot smaller. You don't need to invest in a server as you previously would have to, right? And I think there's increasing emphasis on compliance, especially in an environment like Singapore, but I see that in many other countries as well. So and back to my earlier point, when you have humans doing it, the tendency to have mistakes is higher. And maybe better to move on to a platform or system. And new, yes, now in the post-COVID world, if a shift to remote work, even greater reliance on a digital tool. So now is the as good a time as any others. I'll just touch a bit more about some of the things based on my experience. What would be the key success factors? One is definitely you need management buy-in, strong support from leaders. They have to walk the talk. They must really believe in it. Otherwise, any systems implementation could potentially fall flat on the face. Dedicated resources, I think, cannot overemphasize the willingness to commit the time as well as the dollars. So once you set off on embarking on a digital journey, then I think that there's always that dollar amount that needs to be committed. Workforce readiness. Whatever solution they consider must be fit for purpose. I think also you have to consider a workforce profile and readiness. And the last point I have to emphasize is to communicate. You have to let people be aware of the benefits that they can get and assure them that they're not going to lose their jobs, or it's not going to vastly affect the way they're going to be working going forward. You have to put in place a good team and to persist with it. Having a project manager helps, someone who will track the milestones, and a dedicated team with very measurable KPIs. I've outlined, I think, a few pointers about how you can automate. I won't go through them in detail. I think pretty straightforward, but I will just say that the first step is always the most difficult. And it really is to just simply document your existing process. So you have your current process. You'll be surprised, I think some of these processes may not be well documented. So always start by doing that, right? Start to document, put out a workflow, and see where are perhaps the gaps that you think you're spending a lot more time on and potentially can be automated. I think the rest of it is just planning out how you want to do it, evaluating some of the solutions that are on the market, and then do your ROI, the cost-benefit analysis, manage the change. I think implementation comprise of setting up the system, as well as making sure your workforce or your team adapts to the system and use it properly and continually to review. Just 3 more points that I think from experience again that you should factor into consideration. I think one is compatibility. Whatever system that you bring on board, do check in with your other departments or the existing IT framework that you have. It should be compatible with your other systems. Otherwise, you're going to have a huge problem, or it can lead to other set of problems of you having to do manual entry. it should be future proof. What you don't want is to go ahead, buy a system or automate a process, and 3 to 5 years it becomes obsolete, right? And that's where the software as a service actually offer that benefit, because you are also eligible for the continual upgrade if you go along that route, right? And customization, consider, I think, taking the chance instead of just digitizing your existing process, consider taking the chance to revamp your existing process, which may not be the most optimal, so as to take into account that digital work. And the change management process, I thought I'll spend a bit more time just to communicate. Don't do it all at once. If it's a huge project like overhauling your whole HR management system, I would say go for the small wins first. Implement in maybe the smaller markets, get some feedback, get some traction, celebrate those small wins, and then improve, I think, on these earlier projects and to go for the bigger wins. Yeah, and with that, I think I've come to the end of my session. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to also address any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wingit. That was a wonderful presentation and very insightful. I hope that you as the attendees found it useful and can see to add some of these steps into your own digital transformation process within your HR departments. We will be moving on to our next session within the HR Tech channel very shortly, but in the meantime, please head over to one of the other channels to take a look at what's running there. Thank you very much.